FIFA Women's World Cup underway now in Australia and New Zealand. Here's a quick update. Australia beat Ireland in Sydney. In Auckland, New Zealand upset Norway in the first ever win for them. Meanwhile, the U.S. women's team plays Vietnam on July 21st. Owen Poland now joins us live from Auckland with the fun and excitement.
Yeah, hi, Phil. Look, I think a lot of New Zealanders will be shaking their heads in amazement at one of the most tumultuous opening days in the history of the Women's World Cup. The day started with a mass shooting in downtown Auckland, and it ended, as you said, with that historic shock victory by New Zealand over Norway in the very first game of the month-long tournament. New Zealand went into the match very much the underdogs, being ranked 26th in the world, and they were up against the Norwegian side that was stacked full of European talent, ranked number 12 in the world. New Zealand had never won a match before, either men or women, in a World Cup, and there was a record crowd at the stadium behind me of 42,000 people to witness history being made. The New Zealanders were captained by 35-year-old Ali Riley. Now, she's actually born and raised in California, but has a New Zealand father. And she says that she wanted the team to inspire young people around the world and prove that anything is possible, and it sure was. One sports writer says that the opening game will be remembered in decades to come as one of the most extraordinary matches in New Zealand sporting history, and the moment when New Zealand fell in love with women's football.
Yeah. Owen, very, very cool stuff. I love the historic element of it. As you know, we have a lot of soccer, football fans here in the newsroom. They want to know how the U.S. is looking in this tournament.
Well, as the top seed in the World Cup, the United States is shooting for its third straight World Cup victory. So there's obviously going to be a lot of interest in how the team performs against Vietnam in the opening pool match, although the result probably should be a formality, shouldn't say that, given that Vietnam is ranked 32nd in the world. The Americans are having their final training session right now at another stadium across town, and they'll return here tomorrow for the big match. However, it's their next game against the Netherlands, which will be played in New Zealand's capital city of Wellington next Thursday. It's going to be much more interesting because it was those two teams who fought out the last World Cup final in 2019. As you mentioned, the World Cup is being co-hosted by Australia and New Zealand. So having the United States team based here in Auckland has created a lot more interest in the tournament for New Zealanders at least. Around 30,000 football fans from around the world are expected coming to New Zealand over the next month, and half of those fans will be from the United States. So that's going to give our sluggish economy a decent boost, especially at this quiet time of the year in the middle of winter.
All right, Owen, thank you. Apologize to our viewers. He's very, very far away. Nonetheless, everyone is very excited. Big fan turnout, as you heard earlier. But the question is, will it translate into more pay for players? Now, although the U.S. women's national team won a lawsuit for equal pay versus the men's team, other national teams have not been so lucky. Many players at the Women's World Cup will earn just 25 cents for every dollar earned by the men. That's an issue. Many women's teams are struggling to even exist. Back in June, Canada's soccer was facing possible bankruptcy. Weeks before the tournament, FIFA announced it would provide more prize money directly to the players, but it walked back on that pledge this week. For more on what's happening with the 2023 Women's World Cup, we're joined by Kate Delaney, the Emmy winning sports commentator and CEO of the Delaney Media Group. Kate, welcome back from St. Petersburg, by the way. I love that town. You got a lot of sports and soccer going on in Florida, by the way, this past couple of weeks. But let's get to the Women's Cup. What's the problem? I thought we had resolved this women versus men, and I know not to be too U.S.-centric, but as you just heard, not all the teams have obviously done the same thing.
Yeah, and you said it, Phil. Here's the thing. The U.S. pushed and fought and fought and fought and finally got it, and that lawsuit was the key. They won the lawsuit, and you could bet they had so much backing from so many people in the world of sports, lots of men backing them up, lots of professional teams across the board, even NBA players, Major League Baseball players, NFL players coming out all over Twitter, all over social media. So they won that lawsuit and they'll get the money, but the problem is the other teams. And you mentioned it, you know, in the preview of the U.S. where they're expected to win this, and it would be their third consecutive. But what about the other teams? What about the other competition? What about everybody else that's in the middle of the pack and how much they're getting? That's ridiculous, 25 cents per dollar. That's not right. They've got to fight for those other teams.
Where are these important leaders of the FIFA and the World Cup, and where, I don't understand. Where have they been? I mean, why can't they? They're not poor. In fact, they're extremely rich. And I understand some of the teams might not have as much money as the U.S., but the organization itself, the one hosting this event, has a ton of money. Why can't that be used to contribute to the players or countries participating?
You know, honestly, I think part of this is they're reluctant to do that. They still favor what's happening with the men. And of course, there's so many denials about that, but there's no question. You look at some of the corruption that's happened with FIFA, and you and I, Phil, could talk about this over lunch for 5 hours. It's crazy the things that have happened in the past and breaking it down. That's part of the problem. They'll just push it back, walk it back, like you said, and figure out ways to get away from having to.
Yeah. I don't want to make this political, because this is a really historic and fun event where we celebrate women's soccer, essentially. Okay, so we're going to try to keep it positive. The costs, though, that involve for teams that are attending the World Cup, there's obviously plane tickets, hotels, and so on, right? Do they have to pay for all of this on their own, and do they benefit from any of the ticket sales, I guess, is my question.
Well, as far as having to pay for it themselves, they do, but what happens is usually that sponsorship. Somebody sponsors it, so hotels are sponsored or comped in some cases, depending on who the team, what the team is and where they're traveling from. So that usually is covered from that aspect. And do they see any money from it? Again, it depends on the sponsorship, especially this year, because there were individual sponsorships that were sold more instead of bundling things, like breaking out the broadcasting rights. And that gets rolled up into it too, as to how much they could get.
It just seems to me that I think what any athlete would ask for, whether you're a woman or a man, is, you know, one, the salary, right, to have your travel paid for, and sort of a very reasonable and fair outcome when it comes to getting paid as a professional athlete. And by the way, you're also representing your country. I mean, they're not just doing this for fun necessarily. They're doing it, it's a pretty big deal. You're representing your country backs you, it's on your jersey. You would think these countries would take better care of their players.
Yeah, you would think that. I mean, is it a women's issue, women's soccer, who's watching it, all that, if you want to go back into history. But you look at 2019, and 1.12 billion people watched. And this year, it's expected to be 2 billion. That's a lot of people watching women's soccer. And you said it should be fun. I think it's going to be fun, and they should be able to get more money as a result.
Look, I got 3 daughters. I could not be more excited about the popularity of what is happening globally. I feel sad, obviously, about the other part. Give us some takeaways that you think that we'll see over the course of next several weeks that we can focus and talk about. What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm looking forward to the women, the U.S. women, and the fact that Megan Rapinoe, this is it for her. She's an exciting player to watch. And I'm looking for some of the newbies to step up. And I think that Team USA will win its 3rd consecutive, which has never been done, women or men's soccer. So that's exciting. I'm looking for the matchup with the US against the Netherlands. I'm also looking to see what happens with Germany. They've made it into the quarterfinals the last couple of times. They're an exciting team. And of course, you can't count England out either. And maybe we'll see an upset or two.
Yep, all big powerhouses. Really appreciate your time. By the way, you have that little team in Miami that's making news as well, so have fun with that later on this week. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, on